Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are around the world, and welcome back to our final episode of In Conversation with CloudSense, hosted by myself, Alex Mason, where I'll be joined by Vish Kumar, Senior VP of Product Management here at CloudSense. And this week, we will be highlighting the importance of staying relevant in an ever-competitive telco market with some tips from Vish that could help differentiate your business from the competition. Let's get stuck in. Vish, welcome back to our third and final episode of In Conversation with CloudSense. We made it. How's it feel? It's been an emotional one, isn't it?
It is actually. It's been really enjoyable though. I think we've covered off some really great topics, and I think even today's going to be fantastic as well.
It has, yeah. For our podcast debut, it's been an enjoyable one for sure. So our topic for this week is staying relevant. And what we mean by this is how can companies in the telco markets stay at the forefront of their customers' minds when competing with their competitors for time and relevance, and also maximizing the end user experience in order to differentiate themselves. Now, Vish, I'm throwing it back to you. What would be your top tips for telcos looking to stay relevant in this hyper-competitive market?
This is a really interesting topic. It's one a lot of telcos are talking about at the moment. It's also one there's a lot of challenges in terms of just what do we do? How do we stay relevant? Where do we stay relevant? But then balancing that out with customer experience and then all of the different acronyms that get thrown out in terms of like NPS, K, and all those things that really measure what we're doing and how we're doing things. And it dovetails into the topic we talked about last week around market share and making sure that we're, targeting and attracting the right people. But in terms of, I guess, being relevant to your market, it is broken down into very simple things for me, at least. And some of the conversations I do have with our customers and other customers around, well, what should we do and how should we do things? In terms of what is working today and what's not, a lot of key things is around competing with the customer for relevance in their day-to-day. A lot of carriers today are spending a lot of time on their hardware and their infrastructure and their connectivity side of things, which is fantastic. But where there's some struggles is actually translating that into the end consumer's needs and understanding what do they really want. So if we take, for example, a prepaid user that could be in the younger generations, they're more interested in data as opposed to phone calls and SMSs because they're using different applications on a day-to-day basis. And tailoring the network and what we're doing with the network and those messages, how should we tailor to them? So around what is that experience that you're going to have, for example, within that video app? How are you going to be able to interact with your friends out and about when you're in a busy stadium or when you're at a concert, and considering these are the real drivers that these particular cohort are actually going for. A lot of telcos don't really take all of their technical jargon they're working through and also their technical things that they're doing on their infrastructure and convert that back into what is it the real message and what's the experience we're really going to focus on for each cohort they're targeting. There's a lot of things that telcos should be doing within the infrastructure to make sure they are being relevant. So the investment with the infrastructure is probably one I know we've mentioned a few times in the other podcasts. It's an area that you do need to invest in because the relevant side of things is always going to be tied back to how on are you? How reliable are you? And can I trust you to be my carrier and to be there for me all the time? Similar like power outages now. You don't have power, people feel stranded, they feel disconnected. And literally they are. When the internet goes down now, you are disconnected. So even though we're talking about different cohorts and different groups of how they're going to be using your services and your products, it is also important that we talk about the infrastructure and what we've done to make sure that the core products they're going to be using from you are always going to be on, and there's a trust that's built. And that goes across all the cohorts. And that'll make you very relevant to them, because that's one of the first things they're looking at in terms of, is it just price? No. Can I trust you and will you be there? And can I then see inherent value from what you're actually presenting for me? Connectivity is an interesting one where a lot of customers are looking at connectivity as speed. Can I really go fast? Because the applications I want to use are needed. So if you're a B2B and you have a field force where they're using iPads in the field and they're downloading, could be AutoCAD or really complex drawings, they want the speed and they want the bandwidth. So really talking about what your network can do, not just what the infrastructure enables, but also what's relevant to them. And this is really, really key, especially for mobility telcos, where they talk about their 5G offering or their 4G offering or their enhanced coverage. But what does that translate to into the areas and the key cohorts you're really going after? And be relevant to them in terms of what is the experience you can give them, and ensure that they're really maximizing what you have to offer, and it becomes really, really key for them. The other key trap I do see a lot of telcos fall into is they keep doing what they've done before. So they follow their gut to say, this has worked before, so we're just going to try it again. This has always worked to keep this part of the base active, and this is how we've always kept them there. And as a result, what we have seen is the average revenue per user slip, or the number of services per user or per account slightly fall backwards. And that's because they're not using data to really drive the trends and understand what's happening and what's going on within those particular segments of their own market. But then also, what is the overall market doing around everything that they're doing as a telco? So personalization doesn't just talk about in terms of making sure I've got all my marketing and that's personalized. It's the personalization around the service, how they're using the service, and how are they maximizing what you have as a telco to offer. And again, different parts of the base will do different things. In the B2B customer world, they take importance to data as much as everyone else. They want to know how things are working. They want to know what they're doing. And they also want to know that you're there for them, especially when you know they're about to go through a peak period. So that could be the 9 to 5. During 9 to 5, how are you really supporting them by tailoring the offering for them so they understand that, hey, you actually are there for me? It was interesting to a particular telco which has an offering where they give priority to the network for B2B customers between 8:30 and 6:30 at night every day, which I thought was a bit interesting. But then when I looked at it and the value that's offered for it, it actually makes sense for certain customers who do have a field force and who do want to have that priority, especially when they're working in very busy areas like CBD or key built up areas where there is a lot of people around at any given time of day. As we keep going through these, it also looks at the relevance in terms of what's the willingness to keep buying. And that's a real measure in terms of, am I really servicing this market properly? And that's the ability to upsell and cross-sell key things that are relevant to them, but are also willing to pay for. The key one I did have a little chuckle about a couple of weeks ago was a particular telco trying to sell B2B offerings into a prepaid world. It doesn't quite work, and they didn't understand why the particular add-ons had no uptake in that particular cohort. What they actually saw was a slump in the number of users, not because of the add-ons themselves, but because there's a level of disconnect in terms of what the demand was for that period of time, and also for what they were looking for as a whole. Now, the relevant side of things in terms of where we're going and how we're going and what we're doing and ensuring that we're supporting our customers as much as possible still stems back to the one key thing, and that's the overall experience. We need to ensure that as a telco, we are enhancing the overall experience we're giving our customers, because it takes the one failure for them to think about the change, as opposed to supporting them all the way through and then showing them inherent value as you continue to grow with them. But it's the basics that customers demand today. And they are calling them the basics. And that's just a high quality of service. Understand what I want and just make sure you're there for me. They become the basics that they're really after, and they want to make sure that you understand that from them. And that goes right the way through every cohort that you look at in the base. When they look at the reasons why they recommend you to other people and why you're relevant for them at family barbecues, dinners, events, networking sessions, it's because of the extra things that you've done to support them in the personalization for them in their day-to-day, but then also in what they do as a business and what you support them with. And that could be as simple as providing them priority to the network. In the personal world, it could be the fact that you've just wished them happy birthday. As simple as that, on their birthday, you have their birthday and you've just sent them a text message that's really personalized and you said, thank you for that. You didn't have to offer anything, but it's a personalized side of things that supported them through that keeps them relevant and keeps them interested. At the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have feelings and we all want to feel belonging and loyal to where we are actually working or we're actually subscribing to. And it's one of the key things that I've spoken to a lot of telcos about in terms of how are you building that relationship with your customers and maintaining the relevance as they change with you. And it's part of the ones where we've been challenged a fair bit, but we've also worked through to understand that there's a few key basics, especially in the experience layer. If we do it well, we'll maintain customers for life. So Alex, we've covered off, I guess, quite a few points today, but I guess to summarize the day, relevance is still really, really important. It doesn't really matter what your network can do and can't do. It matters about what you can do for the customer and to the market you really want to go after and the market that you're serving. And making sure that whatever value you're creating for them is done really simply and it's done with a level of boldness so your end customer understands it. But to tie it all together, it does come back to the end user experience, ensuring that they feel that they're part of your company, they feel loved and important, but they also feel that they're being treated fairly. So we're not gouging them on price, but if there is a price increase, they understand whatever value is being attributed to it and it's still relevant to where they're going. And that's probably one of the biggest things I can say is really important around relevance and ensuring that we target our markets properly as we go forward.
Amazing. Well, Vish, as always, thank you so much. I think this podcast series really just highlights your level of insight and expertise in this area. So a big shout out to yourself and thank you so much for spending the time to chat with me on this podcast series and hopefully many more to come.